It was a quiet day when Nia met the stranger at the edge of the village. With his dark cloak and strange accent, he seemed harmless enough. But when he asked Nia to share her deepest secret, she had no idea that one whispered word would change everything forever. The village of Kofi was a place where everyone knew each other's name, where the scent of the earth after rain filled the air, and where the rhythm of life was simple and unhurried. The sun rose and set over the same hills, and the lives of its people moved along in peaceful harmony. The clink of tools, the chatter in the market, and the hum of children's laughter filled the air. Life was predictable, and the villagers found comfort in their routines. Nia, a young woman of the village, had known nothing but this peaceful life. She worked as a weaver, her hands deftly crafting cloth from the finest fibers she could gather. She was respected in the village, known for her wisdom and kindness. Yet, like everyone else, she carried a burden, a secret she had never shared with anyone, a secret that weighed on her heart, one that had been passed down through generations, hidden beneath the fabric of her own life. It was on one of her usual trips to the village market when she first encountered the stranger. He was unlike anyone she had seen before. Tall, cloaked in a dark robe, and with eyes that seemed to pierce through to her very soul. He approached her as she gathered the last of her goods, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. He introduced himself as a traveler, one who had been to many lands and seen countless wonders. But there was something unsettling about him, something that made Nia feel uneasy in her bones. I have traveled far, Naya, of Kofi, he said with a knowing smile, and I know of your secret. It has not been whispered in the wind, but I feel its weight upon you. You do not need to carry it alone. Nia stepped back, her heart racing. She had never told anyone about the burden she carried. How could he know? And why was he speaking so openly of it? But before she could ask, he spoke again. Tell me, Nia, what is the secret you carry? Speak it aloud, and I shall help you free yourself from it. The weight of it is too much for one person to bear. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to turn away and never look back. But something in the stranger's words felt too tempting to ignore. She was tired, tired of holding the secret, tired of the sleepless nights and the quiet grief that weighed her down. Maybe, just maybe, this stranger could help. Nia's mind raced, her thoughts swirling like leaves in a storm. She had carried the secret for so long, never daring to speak it aloud. It was a piece of her past, a part of her family's history that could ruin everything she had built in her life. But the stranger's words lingered in the air, and despite her better judgment, she felt an irresistible pull toward him. She began, but the words caught in her throat. The weight of the secret was suddenly unbearable, more so than it had ever been before. Could she really share it? Would it bring peace, or would it destroy everything? The stranger's eyes never left her, all watching with an intensity that made her stomach tighten. He stepped closer, his presence almost magnetic, and for a brief moment, the village around her seemed to fade away. The bustle of the market, the sound of children playing, the distant chatter of friends, all of it disappeared, leaving only the two of them standing in the silence of that moment. You have carried it long enough, he whispered, his voice soft but insistent. The weight is breaking you. Speak, and I will take it from you. Nia hesitated. The villagers had always told stories about strangers with hidden motives. Her grandmother had warned her, "Do not trust the wanderers, for they have no roots. They come to take, not to give." But the stranger's words were too alluring. She felt her resolve crumbling. Her thoughts shifted to the secret she carried, the forbidden promise made long ago by her ancestors, a promise that had bound her family to a mysterious force that demanded an offering every generation. It was an oath to ensure prosperity and peace, but it was also a curse that weighed heavily on her. It was a secret that, if known, could destroy her reputation and her family's standing in the village. Nia finally spoke, her voice trembling. "My family made a deal with a powerful spirit, and every generation one must give a life, a soul to the spirit to ensure the village thrives." The stranger's smile deepened. "Ah, the spirit. Yes," he murmured. "But that is not what you are truly afraid of, is it? You fear what the spirit will demand from you." Nia's breath caught. How could he know that? She had never told a soul. Her pulse quickened, and she felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Tell me, Nia," he said, his voice now cold and calculating. "Who is next? Will you sacrifice your own child as your ancestors did?" Nia's heart sank. The stranger's words hit her like a blow. Could he know? The curse had always been a distant fear, something she never thought would touch her. But now it was creeping closer, closer than she could have imagined. Nia staggered back, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The stranger's words had struck a nerve, tapping into her deepest fears. How could he know about the curse, about the pact her family had made with the spirit? The weight of the revelation sank in, and with it a gnawing sense of dread. "Who are you?" Nia managed to whisper, her voice barely audible. The stranger didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied her, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling knowing. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he reached into his cloak and pulled out a small, weathered pouch. It was sealed with an intricate symbol, one that Nia recognized all too well. It was the same symbol that had been carved into her family's ancestral stone, the symbol that marked the pact her ancestors had made. "I am one who seeks what is owed," the stranger said, his voice low and cold. "I collect the price that is paid for the prosperity of villages like yours." Nia's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't just a traveler, he was part of something much darker, something that had been watching her family for generations. She had unknowingly invited him into her life, into her secret, and now the danger felt all too real. "I have come to collect," he continued, "and I know your secret, Nia. The question is, what will you do now that it has been revealed?" Nia's mind spun. She had been foolish to even entertain the stranger's offer. She had believed him to be a source of help, someone who could ease her burden. But now it was clear he wasn't here to help. He was here to take. She stepped back, her mind racing for a way out. What could she do? Who could she turn to? The village was vulnerable, and her family's curse had always been kept secret. Until now. The stranger had shattered the silence, and the truth was now in the open. There was no turning back. But then a thought struck her. The stranger had mentioned the spirit, the very force that held her family's future in its grip. Perhaps there was more to this than just the curse. Maybe the spirit wasn't as malevolent as she had been led to believe. Maybe, just maybe, she could break the cycle. "I don't believe I owe you anything," Nia said, her voice gaining strength. "The spirit you speak of may have claimed my ancestors, but it will not claim me or my family." The stranger's smile faltered for just a moment, and Nia saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. It was a small victory, but one she would not ignore. There had to be a way to outwit him, to take back control of her fate. She couldn't let this stranger, this collector of secrets, use her family's burden against her. The stranger's eyes narrowed as Nia stood firm, her resolve hardening with each passing moment. He stepped forward, his movement slow and deliberate, his cloak swirling around him like a dark shadow. You think you can escape the past, Nia, he said, his voice a soft hiss. The spirit has marked you and your family, and no amount of defiance will change that. The curse is bound to your bloodline, and the spirit will claim what is owed. No one escapes. Nia's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to let the fear consume her. She had spent her entire life hiding from this truth, from the very thing that had haunted her ancestors. But now, standing face to face with the stranger, she realized something important. The spirit wasn't a monster to be feared. It was a force that could be understood. If she could learn its true nature, maybe she could break the cycle and free herself from the chains that bound her. You are wrong, Nia said, her voice steady now. The curse does not own me. I am not the price to be paid. I will find the spirit and I will confront it. I will break the bond my ancestors made. For the first time, the stranger's smile faltered and completely. He took a step back, his eyes wide with disbelief. You would seek out the spirit? He asked, his voice tinged with an unsettling mixture of amusement and frustration. You think you can bargain with a force older than time itself? He continued, voice heavy with disdain. Nia nodded, unwavering. I must try, she said firmly, her resolve hardening with each passing moment. The stranger's expression darkened. Very well, Nia, but remember this. You have no idea what you're truly dealing with. The spirit is not something you can simply confront. It has its own rules, its own desires. If you walk this path, you will pay the price, whether you like it or not. Suddenly, the air grew cold, the wind picking up around them in a fierce swirl. The stranger raised his hand, and the pouch he had pulled from his cloak began to glow with an eerie light, the same glow that surrounded the spirit symbol. You have made your choice, the stranger said, his voice now cold and distant. But know this, Naya. Once the truth is known, there is no turning back. The spirit has already chosen, and you will either accept his demand or it will claim you in a way you cannot imagine. With a final, chilling glance, the stranger turned and disappeared into the wind, leaving Nia standing alone in the marketplace, her heart heavy with the weight of the revelation. The village, once peaceful, now felt like a ticking clock. Every second that passed brought her closer to the spirit and closer to the fate she could no longer deny. The wind howled through the trees as Nia made her way back to her home. The stranger's words echoed in her mind, growing louder with each step. The path ahead was uncertain, and she knew that confronting the spirit would not be easy. But in her heart, she felt a strength rising, one she had never known before. This was her family's legacy, her burden to bear, but she would not allow it to destroy her. Not without a fight. As she entered her humble home, Nia knelt by the fire and began to prepare herself for the journey. She had to find the spirit, face it, and break the curse that had haunted her people for generations. She knew it wouldn't be simple. The stories had warned of the spirit's power, of its insatiable hunger for what was owed. But Nia wasn't afraid. Her people had survived centuries of hardship, and it was time for her to take her place as a true protector, not a victim. The night was still, the only sound the crackling of the fire. Nia closed her eyes, whispering into the darkness, I will find you. And when I do, I will speak the truth. No more secrets, no more fear. The next morning, Naya set out with only the essentials, her courage, her resolve, and the strength that her ancestors had passed down to her. As she ventured toward the forest where the spirit was said to reside, she remembered her grandmother's words. The secrets we keep will either define us or destroy us. It is only when we face the truth that we are truly free. With those words in her heart, Nia entered the forest, ready to confront the spirit and the dark legacy that had shadowed her family for far too long. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but Nia knew one thing for sure: this would be her battle and her victory. And so she disappeared into the heart of the forest, the wind whispering her name, the trees standing as silent witnesses to her courage. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in her life, Nia felt truly free.